since 2008, when she took the Speaker's gavel, we have 30 fewer seats than we did when she took over. So this actually really hasn't gone well. And when you look at some of the amazingly talented leaders that we have in our caucus, including some incredible women, like Marcia Fudge, who I hope will run, she's my mentor, I think you'll see what a new generation of leadership will mean for this caucus and for the Democratic Party and ultimately for the American people.
Well, you wouldn't know it from listening to Massachusetts Democrat Seth Moulton, but Democrats just had their best midterm performance since the Watergate class of '74. Well, now Moulton is leading a handful of right-of-center House Democrats, including Ohio's Tim Ryan, who want to deny the speakership to the woman who helped lead them back to the majority twice, California Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Now, so far, they're doing so without even a declared challenger. But the Get Pelosi faction has found a face for their push who isn't white and male. Ohio Congresswoman Marcia Fudge says that she's considering it, though none of the members of the anti-Pelosi faction can say how many votes they'd actually have. And by the way, they'd need 218. Pelosi and Fudge met for about 45 minutes on Capitol Hill on Friday. Fudge says Pelosi didn't tell her not to run, but they did have a good discussion.
We talked about the differences we have, and I think that we had a very, very good meeting.
Okay.
And I'm going to continue to think.
Let's bring in our panel. Michael Steele, former RNC chairman and host of the podcast Man of Steel, former Democratic Congresswoman from Maryland, Donna Edwards, and Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com. Thank you all for being here. I'm not even really sure where to begin, but I'm going to start with you, Michael Steele, my friend Michael, because you, more than anyone else, were the architect, brilliantly so, of the Pelosi strategy in 2010. Yeah. You know, much of the reason that the wave happened in 2010, partly was the Tea Party, partly it was a real vitriol against President Obama, but you as RNC chair directed that energy against Nancy Pelosi. Ever since then, the people who have bought into that anti-Pelosi feeling, the only people more fervent than the Tea Party folks who bought into it are other Democrats.
I know.
They now have said, oh, my God, people don't like Nancy Pelosi. She's got to go. So you're responsible for this, man.
I know.
So you need to explain to me, why did your tactic work so well on Democrats?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
You want to be chairman of another party? Because you seem to be really good at running the Democratic Party.
At this point, I think that's right. But here's the thing. You know, my strategy in 2010 was not exclusively political. It was also respecting the center of power in Washington. I've watched Nancy Pelosi. I've known her from our political stage here in Maryland.
She's originally from your state, from Maryland.
She's from Baltimore, yeah. She, you know, from a strong, smart political family. I have a great deal of admiration for her capabilities. I respect what Nancy Pelosi brings to the table. And I don't think Donald Trump, who's totally clueless about Nancy Pelosi, he thinks he knows Nancy. Trust me, his tweets out there saying, oh, Nancy, I can get you the job. Yeah, right, brother. She needs your help, all right? And trust me, when she gets the job, and she will get the job, let's just be clear about this. She will get the job. When she gets it, Mr. Trump, you don't know the hurt you're about to feel, my friend. You do not understand. She's precise. She's very smart. She's tactical. I say that out of respect as an opponent of Nancy Pelosi's. And the reframed the argument in 2010 around her because she was the archetype, she structured that Democratic strategy in 2009 and 2010. She was the power center much more than Barack Obama. You play to the strength. You don't play to the weakness. I played to the strength in 2010, and it still surprises me that Democrats are taking that strategy and using it against one of their own.
Yeah, and very quickly before I go to everyone else, Michael Steele, because you had the job of RNC chair. When your party does not have the White House, who is the leader of the other party? So when one party has the White House, which figure is the leader of the other party?
Typically, it's the minority leader.
Is it more the Speaker of the House or the minority leader than it is the RNC chair?
Well, on a national, I see where you're going. On a national stage, yeah, you sort of share that space because you make the political argument that the legislators can't necessarily make.
Right.
So your voice weighs very, very favorably in setting that tone politically. You're obviously not going to be on point on legislation,
right?
But the political strategy, the political commentary, the framing of the arguments in a political context, that's where the DNC, RNC chair typically will play that role.
Okay, so to Donna Edwards, and I asked that question for a reason, because a lot more people, I would argue, and this is not a value judgment on either of them, because I have great respect for both of these people. I guarantee you a lot more people just walking down the street know who Michael Steele is than Nancy Pelosi. I doubt that a single person in any state, and maybe Jason can weigh in on this, when they were going around and people were talking to their constituents and they asked, what do you care about? They said Nancy Pelosi. Because if she walked up to people who say they hate her, they probably wouldn't be sure who she was. They'd be like, what a nice lady. Because most people, unfortunately, Americans don't pay attention to who politicians are other than the president. Right? But they see the RNC chair on television. So I don't believe that this was the driving issue for anybody. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. But you were in Congress. Is it possible to you that the issue for these people, let's put them up. Here's the Get Pelosi faction. Tim Ryan, Seth Moulton, both of whom have been opponents of Nancy Pelosi's forever and ever and ever, since they've been elected, really. Kathleen Rice, Earl Palmer. So this is the group, Philemon Vela from Texas. So you can see them going down there. They're mostly white males. They are called #5whiteguys is the sort of nickname for the leaders of this faction. They say that she must go because she is somehow destroying the party's image. Do you believe that as a former elected official, that the thing that's driving America crazy about the Democrats is Nancy Pelosi?
Well, it's not, and the election results tell us that truth. I mean, the fact is that even though ads were run by Republicans in so many of these districts against Nancy Pelosi, those people actually won their elections, and so and Democrats took the majority. And not only is it a majority that's the largest since Watergate, it's actually bigger than the majority that came in 2006, the number of seats that were flipped in 2006 when Nancy Pelosi first became Speaker. And let's look at what the real job of the Speaker is, because I served in that leadership circle, and it is really to keep Democrats together, to hammer out an agenda, to to take care of all the various factions of the Democratic Party, the thousand flowers blooming. And Nancy Pelosi has done that. I mean, she was the architect, really, of the Affordable Care Act. And the reason that Democrats lost the majority and that Michael Steele and the Tea Party were so successful in 2010 was about the Affordable Care Act, was about the opposition of the Tea Party to that. And the fact is that in 2018, the reason that Democrats took the majority is because it was the Affordable Care Act, potential pre-existing conditions. And so talk about that irony. And so I think it's important for us to have leadership that knows what it's doing, especially in the face of a Republican-controlled Senate and a White House, that we need somebody who has been there, who's a proven leader, who's battle-tested, and who can take on these Republicans and work on an agenda that the voters voted for. They weren't voting about the Speaker or the House. They were voting for an agenda on health care and affordable prescription drugs and building roads and bridges and creating jobs and reforming the political system. This is what this election was about.
Very quickly before we go to break, Jason Johnson, when you were out there on the campaign trail, were people telling you that the thing they were voting about, that the thing that was driving them to the polls and making them stand in line was Nancy Pelosi?
They don't care about Nancy Pelosi. They didn't care about Russia. They didn't care about most of this D.C. nonsense. The kind of person who's motivated by anger and vitriol towards Nancy Pelosi is the kind of person who's going to vote for a Republican anyway.
Correct.
It doesn't make a difference one way or another. The biggest concern that I have with this, and I'm on record as saying, look, I think it's always good to have a wartime consigliere. I think it's fine to change leadership from time to time, especially in the Democratic Party, especially when you've got all these new people. But somebody's got to step up. You got all these guys who are trying to talk about that life, but none of them are trying to come for the king. All these 5 white guys who are coming forward, none of them have said that they're actually going to run. They all want to hide behind Marcia Fudge. So that's the real concern that I have. If you have a problem with Nancy Pelosi's leadership, step up, be that person who's willing to step into the breach. Otherwise, you're just talking.
Yeah, when we come back, I want to talk about that, because not only have these the #5white guys, that's what we're calling them, because that's the hashtag about them, because it's Seth Moulton and Tim Ryan, both longtime opponents of Nancy Pelosi, that are leading this. But to Jason's point, none of them want to run. They have decided to step behind and push to the front Congresswoman Marcia Fudge. I want to talk about that and the curious absence of their interest in the second in command. Because you know what? All of the leadership of the Democratic Party are of a certain age, even Marcia Fudge. Like, these are none of the people they're pushing forward are the young Turks that are just coming in. And I want to talk about the people they're not going after on the other side of the break. The panel's all coming back. And in our next hour, Stacey Abrams ends her bid to be the governor of Georgia, but vows to continue her fight against voter suppression. We'll be right back.